Good morning, church. My name is Noah Gregory, and I have been a member of First Church Jonesboro for a year now. Serving has always been a vital part of my church experience. Before attending this church, I was a member of the Methodist church in my hometown, Piggott. Some of my earliest memories are of my time in that church. I remember our Wednesday night meals, the old men that would entertain me with jokes so I'd quit messing around with the foosball machine, the volunteer kitchen staff that would sneak me desserts, and of course, the time I got to spend with my family. I remember Sunday mornings, drawing all over the bulletins during service, singing along to my favorite hymns, and standing right at the edge of the pew after the benediction so I could high-five everyone as they headed toward the door. I was around 9 or 10 years old when I was first given an opportunity to serve in the church. A woman named Laura Wood first came to me during a Sunday school lesson and asked if I was ready to become an acolyte. I promptly told her that I was not, and I did everything in my power to try to get my parents to get me out of having to serve. This didn't work, and before too long, I was donning a blue robe that was far too big for me and struggling to reach the altar candles every Sunday morning. But I grew into it, and I grew to love it. I would do my duties, and then I'd sit with Miss Laura, and we'd draw together and eat candy through the service. Years would go by, and eventually I grew out of those acolyte robes. Miss Laura would pass away, our pew was a lot lonelier, and there weren't any youth for me to pass that torch to, not yet anyway. I found myself faced with another opportunity to serve my church, a new opportunity. I remembered that while growing up, a sweet lady named Judy Nettles would bring the children of the church down for children's time. She'd become sick at some point, and so that part of the service had slowly disappeared. But at the age of 14, I brought children's time back. Truthfully, I don't remember many of the messages I spoke about in the years that followed, but I have always remembered that first Sunday and that first message. Like our message today, it was based out of Romans chapter 12. We have different gifts according to the grace given to each of us. If your gift is prophesying, then prophesy in accordance with your faith. If it is serving, then serve. If it is teaching, then teach. If it is to encourage, then give encouragement. If it's giving, then give generously. If it is to lead, do so diligently. If it's to show mercy, do it cheerfully. I've held these words close to my heart for nearly a decade now. Every word holds so much meaning for me. So why is it important for us to serve in some way in our church? For me, that answer is simple. By serving God and by serving His people, His church, I've discovered myself. I've discovered who God made me to be, and through the years, as I've grown in my willingness to serve my church, to serve God's people, my brothers and my sisters, I've found that more times than not, God is using this service to further develop me and to further develop my relationship with Him. For a few years prior to working here at this church, I freelanced. I worked with a number of amazing clients, great people, and great environments, but I was miserable. I was living a life that I had prayed for years, living out an opportunity that I'd prayed for years, and I was realizing that really it wasn't all that I'd imagined it to be. During that time, I was still in college, but I'd made the decision to continue attending my home church. When COVID-19 broke out, I partnered up with my pastor, Joe Cole, and every week we'd meet in his law office, and we would record the sermon for that week. I'd edit it over the course of a few days before uploading it to our Facebook page. And this truly was the only work that I enjoyed doing at this time. It was a lot of work, especially at that time, because I had no idea what I was doing. I was learning as I went along, but I loved every second of it. When we were able to get back into our church building, we got a live stream camera, and we used this to broadcast our sermons weekly. Our congregation began to grow, and once again, a new opportunity presented itself to me. With a group of youth now attending our church, and with help from my mom and dad, we renovated an old classroom in the church basement and started the first youth Sunday school class that my church had had in nearly 8 years. After a few months, the 2 girls in my class asked if there were any opportunities in the church for them to serve. I prayed on this for a while. I reflected on the opportunities that I had had in the church at their age, and I had an idea. I talked with the leaders of the church, and together we began to work on reviving our acolyte program. Within no time at all, those girls adopted the same robes that had first helped me grow in my ability and in my desire to serve my church. But outside of my church activities, I was still praying for God to give me an out for my professional life. I was feeling like all this time, over 10 years of my life at that point, was wasted on this passion for videography. In my mind, I could have done anything, but I chose to do something that I was truly beginning to detest. God answered my prayer, and He answered it with this church. My brother had sent me the contact info of Casey Turner to inquire about this position, and I didn't waste a second. Within a week, I was brought on board, and now I get to serve my church every single day. But the truth is, I've served my church for most of my life now. That church has not always been here, but I've grown in my ability, my desire to serve for most of my life. And I have been blessed abundantly because of that, through that. And I've enjoyed every second of every opportunity. And I will continue to enjoy every second of service I'm able to provide from now until the day I die. Whether that be helping with these church services, recording the testimonies of our Breaking Bonds brothers, creating light shows for our worship team, or seizing an opportunity that's yet to be presented to me. God's at the wheel, and so long as there's work to be done in His name, I'm game for whatever service He calls me to do. And I pray that there's work for me yet. My challenge to you today, ask yourself this: what gifts has God given to you? How might you be able to use those gifts in service to others and in service of this church? Whatever those gifts might be, there is a place for them here within this church, and there is a place for them within God's kingdom. And whatever those gifts might be, let's use them to glorify the name of our Savior and to continue to put Him first in our lives.